Hello, I'm 𝗃𝗵𝗃. I'm a partner at 𝗃𝗵𝗶𝘁, an executive search and leadership advisory firm. I'm also the co-founder of The Council, a private network for senior executives. And this is Leaders in Motion. Today I'm joined by Laurent Scarato. Laurent is French. He's a French executive who has spent nearly 2 decades building and transforming industrial operations across China, not as a visitor, but as someone who chose to stay, learn the language, and work inside the machine. He led factories, navigated post-acquisition integrations, and turned around businesses in decline across some of China's most demanding manufacturing environments. In this conversation, we'll talk about what it really takes to lead in industrial China over the long term, why so many Western companies keep getting the local mandates wrong, and what Laurent sees changing and not changing, but operating in China today. Laurent, welcome to Leaders in Motion.
Good afternoon, Kevin, and thank you for having me.
Great. Like we usually do, it would be great if you can guide us through your journey, what brought you to China, also explain us your career over the last few years.
I'm French, easy to spot when you hear my accent. I'm an engineer by background, a manufacturing engineer. My first real experience was in Malaysia. I spent 1.5 years there in the local company. And what was interesting for me is the learning of a different culture, for sure. And I was in a company owned by 3 Malaysian Chinese. And after that, I wanted to go to China. And actually, why China? Because I started to understand that China would be this great power in the future. So I felt the need to understand it. To understand the country, you need to be there. So that's how I tried to look for a job there, and I found a job too, actually. And I ended up in a French company in Shandong province. It's in the middle of nowhere, 2.5 hours from the capital, Jinan. It was a JV between a French company and a local company making RF cable. And I was recruited as a technical manager. Actually, I was quite young and I was not fit for the position, to be honest. I had no technical experience on this particular industry and no managerial experience, but they were looking for a replacement for a technical manager, actually, who was coming back to France. And I was there, willing to go where no one else wanted to go, so I got the job. Okay, so let's say I was at the right place at the right time, and I accepted something that other people didn't want to do. So that's how I got the job, actually. But it's like this. So you need to try something. And so I was technical manager there with like 10, 15 people, managing R&D, PI, maintenance, process support, and so on, technical marketing. At a certain point, the company acquired the share of the partner, and we decided to transfer everything, all the equipment from France to China. So then I managed the transfer. I stayed 5 years in Shandong. My last year was operation manager, so managing the factory basically and bringing reorganization and bringing tools from our automobile division. The idea was that the factory was not performing well, so we needed someone to bring change and bring a new dynamic to the factory. So I did that for a year. And we got very good result in terms of scrap rate and OEE and stock valuation. So that was, the mission was a success. Then I decided to leave the company to move to Shanghai because my wife was there and I got a baby. So I had to be closer. And then another very important step in my career is I met via a headhunter, but I met 2 people that own a company, French company, and they wanted to set up a factory in China. So they were looking for a plant manager. So I had no experience in plant management. I was also undersized compared to what they wanted, the profile that they wanted. But I was very lucky that the headhunter I was discussing with saw a potential into me and advised those owners to try me. Okay, so they trusted me, and I was their number 1 employee in China. So I was recruited to start the first factory of the group in China, in Suzhou, basically. So the first task is obviously to find a building, and then, it's a green field. You recruit people, you bring assembly line, and then you integrate all the processes over time. So I basically set up and grew this factory and managed it for 14 years, actually, from 2010 to end of 2023. It's a factory making mechanical transmission and then electrical transmission for lawn care equipment. Something quite interesting here is that we started to see a technological change in this industry, like automobile, a little bit similar. So we had to develop electrical motor and redesign our transmission to be able to install that into battery-powered mower. So this is the first, quite a big step for our company, how do you move from a purely mechanical company to electromechanical company? So we have developed basically a supplier in China, in 𝗂𝗏. And at a certain point, we had to go further. And we decided, or my bosses decided to acquire this company. So we did the closing in 2019. So in 2019, this company in 𝗂𝗏, this supplier became our company. And I also started to manage this company. So I had basically the Suzhou company and the 𝗂𝗏 company. So this is how we were able in our group to transition from a purely mechanical company to a company with electrical know-how. So we bought this company for the R&D and the manufacturing footprint. And it allowed also us to access a new market, the power tool market. So this was a very important step for me, an acquisition. So how do you manage an acquisition? Luckily for me is, although I'm an engineer by background, I did 𝗰𝗵𝗶 at 𝗃𝗵𝗵 in Shanghai. And that gave me the tools and confidence to be able to systematically do this acquisition. Okay? So without that, to be honest, I don't think I would have succeeded. So I basically transformed this company from a local company, quite disorganized actually, to a more westernized company, not fully European. I don't want to have that in China, to be honest. For me, the best is to have an hybrid between a local company and European company. And you need the flexibility and low cost. And then I transfer in 2022 this factory to a new factory closer to Ningbo to be able to have first a new site, but also to access the talent pool in Ningbo. Now, at the end of 2023, we decided with my family to leave China. That was also an important step. Now, why? Is because after 20 years, I felt the need to reconnect with my roots. I come from the mountain area in France, and I really felt the need to come back to my mountain. And also with my aging parents, I felt that I had not been a very good son in 20 years, especially during COVID. I didn't go out of China for 3 years. So that's what motivated this decision. That being said, after 1 year in France with my wife is Chinese, we felt after 1 year that Europe was no longer a place for us. It's very hard, even for a foreigner who has spent all his life or most of his career in Asia, to go back to France. It's a culture shock, to be honest. And to me, France is a little bit backward now. People live in the past and social environment change a lot. So after 1 year, we decided to let's go back to China. China is a place where I feel good, actually. I feel I can contribute. I feel that I'm motivated. It's fun for me to be here. So I basically came back early 2025 in another company, in a connectivity solution.
Very powerful statement that you mentioned, that you had this drive or this need to reconnect with your roots, but then you realize the roots is it's a question mark where they really are now, in a way, right? So maybe you can tell us more about that. How did it feel? Why you felt that France was no longer a place where you could stay too long or permanently?
Well, there is the honeymoon period. So the first few months, you reconnect with your family, you go to mountain, you do a lot of activity. That's great. And then you start to understand what's happening. You talk, of course, to people. I wanted to find a job locally also. And then you realize that the past 20 years, the country changed, the continent changed. But although something changed, because I still connect with the news and so on, but I don't live there. I didn't live there anymore. So the social environment changed a lot, but most importantly, felt that the people in France, they are not looking at the future. They are looking at the past. And this is a bit contrast to me, a complete asymmetry with what I was experiencing in China. All my life in China, my 20 years in China, what I saw is people that don't look at the past. They are always looking at the future. The mindset is now is better than before, and we know the future will be better than now. Is this ability to change, to pivot quickly in China, this openness to new things, this long-term vision, and I'm quite amazed with that in China, 20 years, vision of the country, and this very deep analysis on you have a vision, how do I go to the vision? I need education, I need industry, I need financing, all that, what China is doing. And I found that in France, there is no such a thing. I spent some time on politics, on international relations, geopolitics. I'm quite interested in those topics. And I was amazed at the political landscape in France. I was the impression to see 4 or 5 years old kids in the kindergarten, very politically driven. It's like in China, engineers are driving the country, and in France, kids are driving the country. And to be honest, I started to feel sad about that. And I started to first, sadness, disappointment, and I felt that I could no longer stay there. Think about a train that represents innovation. This train is going fast. It's a fast train. Okay, China is in the train. It's going fast. I felt that I fell down from the train. I'm at the station and the train is moving away. And I felt that if I stayed longer in France, I would become obsolete within 3 to 5 years. So coming back to China, for me, was a way to still be relevant, still be a part of this world, a part of innovation, Maybe I'm not very optimistic, but I'm an optimistic person, but I felt quite pessimistic while I was in France, actually, really.
Help me out understand a couple of things. I'm very interested in that part, to see people living in the past. What does it really mean? How does it reflect on working with people who live 2 different day life, and maybe they don't even realize.
So on the professional side first, China is a highly competitive environment. So people are used to compete, are used to question, are used to always find a way to do better. Now in Europe, it's different. We had a glorious past, so we can call it legacy. And what I feel in companies in France is that a lot of companies still rely on this legacy. Sure, they are working on innovation, they are working on that, sure. But it's like they are going with the flow, still relying on legacy product or legacy customer or legacy market. They would like to change, but it's very hard actually in my last experience, for the French people to challenge themselves. Oh, we have been doing like this, or but this is our market. Oh no, we don't change the procedure. Or it's very hard for them. They want to do something, but I can tell you they are not able to do it. I face that quite a lot. And a lot of time, what I have seen in many companies actually, is that they are confident they are doing the right thing because they have always been doing that. It's not working in China, but they are confident that it's working. So they don't really question the 20, 30 years of legacy. So for me, this is very dangerous. In China, I don't see that. Or this is not my experience actually with my team the past 20 years. There is always this question about how can we do things differently? How can we diversify, or we could try this customer, or, different things, because the environment requires you to do so. But in Europe, no. I don't want to talk too much about politics, but you talk about a personal side of it as well. France, a lot of people are assisted, okay? And this is more on the first question you asked me about what I saw there on the personal. In France, you can easily see that whether you work hard or not hard, it won't make a big difference. France basically is one of the countries that tend to smoothen the most the wealth of individual. And you can really see the behavior change because of that. 40, 50 years ago, people could, by being successful, they could accumulate wealth, okay? And they could make an impact on their living. Nowadays, honestly, it's much more difficult. And you see that on day-to-day life. People are not hungry anymore. If you work hard anyway, doesn't make a big difference because, tax will take your income and it will be given to someone else. If you own an asset anyway, you are treated as a bad guy. So there is this mindset in France that I cannot say push you not to do well, but it's not a country that promotes meritocracy. And that's easy to see when you are in France. So if there is no meritocracy, how do you want to grow? How do you want to be successful? How do you want to fight with the rest of the world? A lot of French people, French are really good at giving lessons to other people, right? We are French, we know how to do, we should tell you how to do. French people are very good at giving other lessons, okay? Because we are proud about our history. Yes, we have a great history for sure, but that was a long time ago. But a lot of French people are still there. They are not living, to me, in the real world. But we have great legacy, I must say.
You mentioned the differences between the working culture. Do you have any experience where it was a little bit harder to work, given the mindsets, like you explained really well, like in a headquarter? What I also hear a lot is sometimes it's a little bit more difficult for the local team to move the direction or to convince the headquarter, and then maybe rely on someone like yourself, the bridge, to relay this conversation. Did you face that?
To be honest, it was to me the hardest in my last job. How to properly convey to France what is needed in China. And actually, it's very interesting. Your question is very interesting because I was recruited in my last company to grow the business in China after 5 years of decline and 3 years of loss, to diversify, to bring change. So now I did that, basically. Okay? Now how? It's not rocket science. You listen to the customer, you listen to your local team, you understand the business friction, you try to solve them, okay? Now, there is a misunderstanding about a lot of foreign company or people in Europe about competition in China. They see China as an unfair place. Government is helping local company or, customer want cheap. But that's not the reality to me, okay? To me, first, in China, if you want to compete, you need speed. I think everybody will agree on that. You need agility and you risk-taking. And something that is also very important is not to make a mistake between the price of a product and the value. Chinese company, they're very smart. They will buy the right product value proposition, the right price for the right functionality. A lot of foreign companies, they come with product that is great, but it's not needed. It's over-designed. It's, I have the best product, sure, but this is not what customer need. So the first thing is, what does your customer need? What is the function that they need? And I can tell you, and I'm sure this is what I experience. If you listen carefully to your customer, you understand what they want. If you can localize your operation, your R&D, if you can bring speed, agility, and risk-taking, as a foreign company, you can compete. Local company, they can buy from you more expensive than local competition, 10, 15%, it's okay. Now, if you end up with a product that is 50% more expensive, you have a problem. It's not your customer, you have a problem. Either your product is not what is needed, or your operational cost doesn't make sense in China. So that, I think, a misconception of a lot of European companies. But for me, as a foreign brand, there is room. Now, there's another thing is you need to help your customer in China. Because China is a highly competitive place, fast-changing environment. Our customers in China, they face. So how can you help? How can you support them as a supplier? So it's the same thing. You need to. If they go left, you go left. If they go right, you have to go right. Now, a lot of headquarters, they would say, no, they are troublesome, this is our way. But no, if you continue your way, you will never succeed in China. Once again, you need to be fast, you need to be agile, and you need to take some risk. And I can tell you, a lot of companies in Europe, at least in France, they don't like that. They don't like risk. They don't want when it's fast. They don't want when it's today is A, tomorrow is B. But this is a reality. What do you want? Do you want to grow the business or do you want to be in your comfort zone? So if you do that, it's what we did last year with my team in China. We got a lot of successes with companies like Huawei. Everybody knows Huawei in China. And I met a lot of guys in China. They say, if you can work with Huawei, you can work with everybody. That is true. Huawei is super challenging. They push you to the limit. Really? But to me, working with them is super fun because they push you like hell. They bring you outside of your comfort zone, but they bring great projects. And if you can support them in being fast, agile, and you take some risk, sure, you take risk. At the end, it's a win-win. You win together. And that is very important. But I can tell you, I had a lot of difficulties to have an alignment on that with my headquarters. That created some friction between us because they don't like that kind of business. So that's one of the issues that
I understand from what you say that the Chinese markets require, and this is where Chinese companies are strong and are great at, is a customer-centric approach, thinking about what the market wants first and then designing everything around it, whereas the European companies are thinking about how great of a product. Do you feel that this is approach right now is making European company losing the Chinese markets?
Of course, the longer you wait, the more difficult it will be because local company will be stronger and stronger. They're already quite strong. But yes, I think there's still room. But I see both companies. I see the two kind of company. Some company, they understood that long time ago. So they are already listening to the customer in China. They have strategic marketing here, product marketing here, and R&D. So they basically do what you just mentioned. But there are a lot of foreign companies that still don't get it. Or they seem to understand, but they don't give the necessary authority to the local team to do it. And that's another issue to me. Understanding is one thing, executing it and making sure your team in China has a level of autonomy to react quickly is another thing. But for me, there is room. As I said, we all compete in the same country. I mean, sure, a local company, maybe they don't have the cost of the headquarters to pay, but they also have R&D. Maybe they don't have a great facility like you have, but sure, their cost is lower. But once again, if you end up with a product that is 10, 15%, maybe 20% more expensive, to me, it's okay. Okay, between 10 to 15% to 10 to 20% is acceptable. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you end up with higher, clearly you have a problem. You have a problem. The company who succeed, and this is also from my past experience as well as what I have seen, is we localize manufacturing, we localize some designing, we localize sales, purchasing, supply chain. Honestly, the cost is no big difference with the competition. It was more costly for us because of the royalties and fee we had to pay to headquarters. Once again, if you localize and you do your homework, there's no reason that you are 50% more expensive. It does not make sense to me. You really do something wrong. I think it's true in China, but everywhere in the world.
You mentioned some principles to follow, guidelines to be successful, like agility, speed. What does it mean to you in practice, in terms of processes, in terms of communication, in terms of how do you actually reflect that and implement that across?
So in the company, I stayed 14 years, and we had basically 3 R&D in the group. 1 R&D for the transmissions, the gearboxes, it was in France. And in China, I had 2 R&D, 1 for electrical motor and 1 for electronic. When you have your own R&D in China and you can develop by yourself to your customer, you bring the agility, the speed, so it's okay. But we had some project where we had to work with our headquarter R&D, and then it became complicated and slow. Because we are not on the same planet when it comes to processes, when it comes to speed. So, in China, sure, you need to have processes, but you're also flexible. I just give an example. We had this very challenging project with a Japanese customer. It was during COVID with the semiconductor shortages. So we had to develop a new controller within 2 to 3 months with a new chipset, a new macro. So this Japanese customer, they gave us a very high pressure. Now, usually it takes 1 year to develop. We did it in 2 to 3 months. We had to squeeze our planning, People had to work extra time. I gave bonuses, to people to work on Sundays or extra overtime. We did a lot of tasks in parallel and we worked with the customer. So we basically succeeded in 2 to 3 months instead of 1 year. Okay. Now that you can do in China. This is quite common actually. Okay. It's nothing special. It happened a lot. But now we had project with our French headquarters. It's not possible to do that. Why? A process is a process. A weekend is a weekend. You don't ask R&D guy to work on Saturday and Sunday. You don't do that in France. Even if I give you more money, no. Saturday and Sunday, sorry, it's family time. It's another culture. I mean, I respect that. But then how do you compete after? So the difference is that's, for me, one of the issues that I faced a few years ago. So R&D, if you want to succeed in China, you need as much as possible to have R&D here. Another thing quite important to me, how do you make decision for new project, for recruitment, for small capex? And I have seen two things. In the company I was for 40, I had basically a guideline for recruitment. I could do what I want. I had a budget. If I'm within this budget, fine, I can do what I want, okay? That allow me to be fast. I need to recruit someone. Okay, I need a new capability. Okay, I have a project with customer. I can decide it. But my last company, it was very different. Highly processes. It's like even to recruit someone, I can't do myself. You have a lot of processes in place with HR function in France. You want to start a project. And I started new project in China by myself to be fast. When you see big project in front of you, you cannot wait 3 weeks. Sometimes you need to make fast decision, which I did, okay? But that created some friction because this is not the way this company is doing. And this is, for me, the asymmetry of what the country need, what the market need, and what the bureaucracy of the company require. And that, for me, one of the issues that I faced in my last company. What level of authority do you and your team have in China in terms of capex, in terms of HR, in terms of R&D, in terms of marketing? How do you launch new project? What price do you give to your customer? The more complexity you have with the headquarters, the less you can succeed. So you need to find the right balance between authority and decision making. It could be challenging. It's one of the issues that I met in my last company. And I try to challenge that kind of thing. I'm not afraid about challenging anyone, but China was not big compared to the rest of the world. Maybe 10% of the group revenue. So nobody will adapt for you. There is a rule in the company, in US, in Europe, in India, in Japan, in China. It's the same for everybody. They understand your need, but nobody will change the process for China because China is not big compared to the rest of the world. So that, to me, is an issue.
When you mention when you mention that you are ready to fight and you're not afraid to fight against or with your colleagues in the headquarters, do you feel that this is something that your Chinese colleagues, your local colleagues, are ready to do as well?
No, it's not at all in the culture here to challenge a headquarters. What I faced in my last company when I arrived is basically all the people who challenge, they left the company already. So the people who stayed in the company for a long time, they accepted this functioning and they stopped long time ago to challenge. They basically live with it. Okay, the company is losing market share, the company is losing money, nobody is getting fired, just people continue with this mindset. So nobody was challenging the headquarters. Although people knew it was wrong, but nobody did it. Now, when I arrived, I'm new. And my mission is clear. Grow the business, diversify, bring new dynamics. So I do what I should do, right? I analyze all the business friction. I meet customer, try to understand what they want, listen to customer, listen to the team. Most of the time, the team in China, they know the issues, they know what is needed. Just listen to them. And after I identify 7 to 10 what I call business friction, then I try to solve them. To solve them is also challenging the way the company works, right? If you see there's a problem, I have a technical background and I come from the mountain. There's a problem, I talk about it, I solve it, period. And then move on, okay? The team in China, I can tell you they were super excited by that because they finally saw someone who could challenge the way the company was working and to make progress. We regained customer loyalty. Customers were really happy because finally they saw someone who could listen to them, follow them, and bring a new dynamic. So customers were really, really happy. Chinese team was really, really happy also. But it's probably one of my learning last year, and one of the mistakes that I made is by doing the right thing for the company, I created too much friction in the company. In France, with some people, not all, but a couple of people at management level, because I was challenging what has been done for many years. And I also found some dead bodies in the closet that prevented the company to transform. So for me, I'm not afraid to deal with that. If it's a dead body, okay, I deal with that. And I don't care if it's your issue, Kevin, or my issue. It's a company issue. We talk about that, we solve it, and we move on. This is my way. But what I realize in large organization is this way doesn't work. Or at least if there is no transparency clearly defined as a company culture, it doesn't work. And this is what I found last year in this company. People were not talking, actually. In China, people knew the problem. If you discuss on one-to-one, people can tell you the issue. They can tell you everything that happened. But nobody was talking to headquarters about that. I mean, yes, some communication went through to headquarters and some people, but nobody was dealing with that because they were too afraid to do anything. So it's kind of political game to me. And that, to me, can kill a company. It's unlucky situation, but I faced that last year because it was a large organization, which I did not really experience before. The company has stayed 14 years. I reported directly to the company owner in France. It was a smaller organization, very direct communication with my peers in France or in Mexico, like a family we talk about. But so that was very direct and transparent communication. You know, if it's your problem, my problem, we don't care. We talk about that, we move on. Nothing is hidden, everything on the table. But that doesn't work anywhere. And this is what I found last year, actually. Transparency is not for everybody, sadly.
That's unfortunate. And do you feel that that right now, this type of organization, but overall European or Western companies, how do they view China now? How do they view the Chinese market? Do you see that it is changing, or they, like you mentioned, like when you went to France, a lot of people are stuck in the past. And do you feel that these type of organization, they have evolved with what China is becoming? What is the current view, in your opinion, of what is happening right now in the market?
Honestly, I think it really depends on the companies. Because if China is a big part of your business, if China is a big part of your global business, of course, the company would adapt better and do what's necessary and listen more to the team in China and probably give more authority. If a company like my previous company make only 7-8% of your business in China, then no, they don't understand China. They think they know, but they don't. Honestly, it really depends on the company. If you have company owners who travel to China often, they discuss a lot with the customer in China, they spend time here, they discuss with the local team, and they are ready to listen, it's not an issue to me. It's not an issue to me. So it really depends on the company. I've seen companies who can really do well in China because they give autonomy to the team, there is transparency, there is two-way communication. It's not I'm better than you, it's two ways communication. So it really depends on the company. I've seen both. What can kill to me a lot of company is the arrogance of headquarters. And that this is something I will be very careful in the future is to try to identify that at the beginning. How open the people are in front or at the headquarters. Is there a kind of arrogance over the country? So it really depends on the company. I've seen everything.
If I ask you the question, why should we commit more to China? It's only 8%. Why should we change and make our life so much more complicated here in a global region for such a small market? What would you answer?
The market is small because you made it small. It could be much bigger. So, of course, it depends on the industry you are in, but at least in my previous company, it could be much bigger. Actually, our competitors, foreign competitors, they were growing much faster because they were able to capture new businesses that we didn't catch. So it's not about what you do now, it's about the potential. China, for my previous company, should be big and could be much bigger. Actually, after a few months, I tried to understand the diversification and the market trend for different markets, civil aeronautic, telecom, or quantum computing, or whatever the market is. And to me, it was clear within 10 years, you could easily double or triple the business. In 15 years, it could be very measured. So it's not about the now, it's about the potential. Now, how to convince? Your management, the headquarters that there is potential is another story. But for me, it's not about now, it's about the vision of the future. China is still a big country and there are a lot of opportunities. Really.
I see, and you may see also lots of companies that are in China and willing to invest more in China, according to the current or the past result. You grow, you increase 10%, you can invest 10% more. But do you believe it is a right approach?
No, what I experience, if you can make a good business case, you can get the mean. My previous company didn't have cash problem. It's a rich company, actually. So if you can show your case and if you can, show the clear plan, the clear business plan, it's okay. You can get the mean. For me, at least in my previous company, that was not the issue. Cash was not an issue. What was the issue is the will to try something very different. That was for me a struggle. Actually, one of my job was, of course, to grow the business, but also to what do we need to do to be ready in 3 years, 5 years, or even longer. So when you see some technological shift, or you feel that there is a transformation of technology, you need to start preparing for that. And this is one of the issues that I face, is I started to see some technological change for different product line, and I felt that if we don't work on it now, within 5 years, we will lose 30 to 50% of business for some market because of this change of technology. We were not ready. So I started to talk about investing in different kind of technology, different kind of product to be able to prepare ourselves for the future. That was very hard because we could not see this kind of change outside of China. But honestly, if you have technological change happening in China, what I'm pretty sure if it works in China, then it will be spread everywhere in the world. So that's why, coming back to what we discussed at the beginning, China is very important to me because now a lot of things are happening here for some market, like telecom is one example, or quantum computing. This is something that is hard, is how do you, because it's not very tangible, right? I mean, you discuss with your customer in China, they talk about their roadmap and they are working on something. And that is difficult, is how do you convince that something will change? And you need to start investing now. It's not very tangible. But that I had a hard time to convince my headquarters about that. We couldn't see that from Europe.
As a leader sitting in the middle, how do you build a case? How do you present a case? What works, what doesn't work? And what is your experience around that?
You have to bring them to China and to see the customer because seeing is believing. You can present your great PPT, your business plan, your case, or to in Paris and show guys, but it doesn't stick. People can hear you, okay, but that's it. They don't believe in it. So what I start doing actually is to invite more guys to China. For instance, the company owner, the president of the company came to China. We spent a few days together and we went to key customer and he could see the dynamic of those customers. I brought a director of another business unit also for civil aeronautic because I was telling him that if we want to keep our market share in China and grow, with 𝗁𝗵𝗁 for the C919, in the future C929, we had to localize more manufacturing in China for that kind of product. So at the beginning, he didn't want because core technology, blah, 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 the usual thing, okay? But he never came to China. So civil aeronautic was the number one business in China for our company, but the BU director never came. So I invited him with a marketing director also. We went to a couple of customers, Comac and their partner, and then they could see. The problem very often is how can they see what you see in China? When you are in China for many years, you see things, for sure, you understand things. But if people don't come, honestly, it's almost impossible for them to understand. So they have to come. You need to organize business trip, what you can call a awareness trip. You bring them to customer, supplier, if you can, competitor. Sometimes it's possible. They need to understand what's happening here, what the team is capable. Foreigner, Europeans still see China as how to call it, people who copy or low tech or. So when people come to China and they see what's happening in Shanghai, Shenzhen, you go to Huawei, you go to a company specialized in semiconductor, it's a nice opener. Then you can be at the same level. They start to see what you see. Not yet, but they start to understand what you say. So to answer your question, if people don't come here, it's almost impossible.
Do you see that there is a new generation of expats coming? I know that COVID has put a big pause on all of these exchanges and pool of foreigners in China. How do you see that now? Do you see that more people coming? Do you see they are very similar to the ones who came in the past, or they are different?
I think some people who left China want to come back because they are disappointed with what they see in Europe. I talked to friends who went back to France and they want to come back to China, actually. But yes, for sure, a lot of people left China now. I think the roles have probably shifted a little bit with a couple of years ago. Is to me now as a GM, if you want to be a successful foreign GM in China. So first, of course, you clearly need to understand the culture and how things are done in China. And you need to be ready to commit to it. That means you need to have this mindset. If you are 60 years old and you come to China just now and you want a stable job, just don't come. You are going to die very, very quickly. Because China is a very challenging environment, so it really pushes you outside of your comfort zone, once again, to be fast, agile, and risk-taking. So first, you need to have the right mindset. People who don't have the mindset, I think they have to go now. They cannot success in China anymore. The second point to me, to be a successful GM in China, but I think it's true for everywhere, but probably even more true in China, is that you need to have some level of control over, for me, it's a triangle, the business, the R&D, and operation. Because the three need to be aligned together to be successful. So if you have control over operation and business, but no control about R&D, you will not succeed. There is no alignment. So you need to have a GM first who has the authority for that, but also who is capable to manage business, marketing, to manage technology, and to manage operation. So that's, to me, it's quite important. So now to do all that, you need to, for me in China now, you need to be a complete industrial GM to be successful. By complete, I mean you need to have industrial and technical capability, for sure. You need to have sales and business development skill. You need to have strategic thinking to be able to project yourself in 3-5 years or even longer. You need to have leadership and transformational capability because things are changing very fast here. So you need every year to shift, to transform, to bring your team to another direction. You need to be able to act sometime in a crisis mode. So China, require that. And you need to have very good communication skill, not with your team in China, but with your HQ. That is a very important capability. And, you have some GM who come from the headquarters. It's easy for them to communicate with headquarters. But if you are recruited locally and you are new in the company, this is difficult because you are new. So communication with headquarters is a skill that a good GM need to master. So that's, to me, how to make what a GM in China should. I don't know if I answer your question, but
Why do you think that Chinese Western companies still need to commit to China, to grow in China?
China teach you how to be resilient and how to be more competitive globally. So for me, China is a great educational tool for companies. You know, if you always stay in your comfortable zone, you don't transform, you don't change. So being in China is so competitive that every company you can succeed in China, I can tell you, it will help you everywhere else in the world. So even though you don't make big profit in China, but at least have an operation here, have an R&D here, have business here, you learn how Chinese company do, you survive in China, even if you don't make big money, but it will be very, very helpful for the rest of the world. So I see China as a necessary market for all the global companies. What I also always say is, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. And for me in China, this is the right mindset to have. You will suffer, you will struggle. For sure, it will push you like crazy outside of your comfort zone, but I can tell you, you will become way more stronger. Like you said, it's like a prépa in France. If you don't die and you can succeed, honestly, you become very resilient. China really bring you resilience.
Laurent, we will close this episode on this. Thank you for being on the show. That was very interesting and very dense. And again, thank you for joining.
Thanks, Kevin. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Leaders in Motion. And if you want to go further, join the Leaders in Motion Academy, our executive program. The first step is simple. Subscribe to our newsletter in the show notes, and you'll get access to our exclusive insights and all the details about the Academy. This podcast is produced by Melanie Hong, who helps leaders and organizations create strategic podcasts. I'm Kevin Hong, and see you next time.